Title: Everyone thought the tailor was begging. Then she cut the hidden stitch from the mafia boss's black tie. Chapter 1: The Black Tie. Lena Marrow noticed the stitch before she noticed the man. That was how her mind worked after 21 years around cloth, steam, cracked mirrors, and men who thought a clean collar could hide an ugly intention. Facet lied first. Fabric lied badly. A sleeve pulled toward fear. A lapel curled when a body had been standing too long in a room it wanted to leave. A tie told the truth even when the mouth above it had learned to say nothing at all. The black tie lay against Matteo Belandi's chest like a ribbon of midnight, sharp, formal, expensive, and wrong. Lena saw it from the sidewalk outside Marrow Alterations, between the hanging plastic strips in her shop window and the reflection of a black SUV idling at the curb. Rain had slicked the pavement into a dull silver shine. The old block smelled of wet wool, garlic from Russo's deli, and hot starch from the iron she had forgotten to switch off when the commotion began. Matteo Belandi stood beside the open rear door of the SUV while two men in black coats watched the street with the patience of locked doors. He was 42, tall, clean-shaven, and dressed with the kind of precision that made other men straighten by accident. His black three-piece suit fit him without apology. His long overcoat hung from his shoulders as if it had been worn not to move. A heavy signet ring caught the weak afternoon light when he buttoned one glove. Everyone on Bell Street knew what he was, even people who pretended the word mafia belonged only to movies. Matteo Belandi owned no office tower on the block, no smiling billboard, no public company with glass doors and polite receptionists. He owned favors, fear, loyalty, silence, and the old Italian social club 3 doors down, where tonight's reconciliation dinner would decide whether half the neighborhood forgave his name or buried it for another generation. And he was about to walk into that dinner wearing a traitor's knot. Lena pushed open her shop door so hard the bell above it hit the frame twice. Mr. Belandi. The nearest bodyguard turned first. His hand did not go inside his coat, which Lena appreciated, but his shoulders widened in a way that told her he had not yet decided whether she was a person or a problem. Shop's closed, he said. My sign says alterations, Lena replied, stepping onto the sidewalk with a pair of silver thread snips in her right hand. That means I fix mistakes before people notice them. A laugh came from behind Matteo, light and mean. Vivian Sarto, the event chairwoman, stood under the green awning of the social club in a cream coat that had never known bus exhaust. Beside her were 2 older men from the Reconciliation Committee and a narrow-faced tailor from uptown whose tape measure hung around his neck like a medal. Lena, Vivian said, using her name the way some women used napkins, to wipe off something inconvenient. This is not a hem emergency. Mr. Belandi is expected inside. Then he should not go in like that. The laughter stopped at once. Matteo's gaze moved to Lena. It did not rush. Men like him could afford to look slowly because the world had learned to wait under their eyes. His face was handsome in a severe, almost old-fashioned way, with black hair combed back from a brow that seemed built for decisions other people disliked. He looked at Lena's wet shoes, her charcoal apron, the burn mark on her left cuff from a careless iron, then the thread snips in her hand. Like what? He asked. His voice was calm enough to make the bodyguard's warning sound louder by comparison. Like someone marked you before you left the house, Lena said. Vivian gave a brittle smile. She wants attention. The poor thing has been sewing funeral cuffs and diner uniforms for 20 years. This is the closest she will ever come to a formal table. The uptown tailor laughed through his nose. Mr. Belandi's tie was prepared by my staff. Hand-pressed. Imported silk. There is nothing wrong with it. Lena did not look at him. She looked at the black tie and saw the lie again. The left blade sat 1/8 of an inch too high, the dimple was too narrow for Matteo's collar spread, and the tail under the front blade had a stiffness that silk did not hold unless someone had forced it. You tied it yourself, she said to Matteo. His expression changed by almost nothing, but the street felt the change anyway. Yes. That is why they chose the tie, not your hands. One of the committee men muttered, What is she talking about? Lena stepped closer. The bodyguard moved to block her. Matteo lifted 2 fingers, and the man stopped. You have 10 seconds, Matteo said. I need 5. She reached for his tie. Every person on the sidewalk seemed to inhale at once. The bodyguard stiffened. Vivian's mouth opened. The uptown tailor took one sharp step forward, already angry because a woman in a stained apron had dared to cross the invisible rope money had drawn around Matteo Belandi. Lena's fingertips touched the silk. Matteo did not flinch, but his jaw hardened. Up close he smelled of rain, cedar soap, and the faint cold leather of his gloves. The tie was better quality than anything in Lena's shop by $1,000, but good cloth was still cloth, and cloth had no loyalty. She slipped the point of the silver snips under the inner fold, where the blade crossed near the knot. The stitch was almost invisible, black thread on black silk, placed where only a tailor, a laundress, or a woman used to repairing other people's secrets would look. "There," she said. The snips clicked. The hidden black stitch snapped. The knot loosened at once, losing its forced shape. The left side fell flat. A tiny coil of black thread dropped into Lena's palm like a dead insect. The committee men stared. Vivian stopped smiling. The uptown tailor's face went white under his expensive haircut. Matteo looked down at the thread in Lena's palm. "Explain," he said. Lena held up the coil between her thumb and forefinger. "Someone stitched the inner blade to make your knot pull left. You tied it the normal way, but the tie was built to betray your hands. Once you walked into the dining room, every old woman at table 3 would see the Belandi widow's mark." "The what?" one of the bodyguards asked. Matteo did not ask. His eyes had gone very still. Lena lowered her voice, not because she was afraid of the street, but because some old humiliations deserved less audience than they had been given. "The forbidden knot. The one they used on men accused of breaking a morning promise. Your father wore it once in a photograph. Not because he tied it. Because someone made sure the whole room believed he did." The rain tapped the awning. Matteo looked at her hand again, at the broken black stitch lying across her skin. Then he looked at Vivian. "Who prepared the football?" The old committee man answered too quickly. "The club arranged delivery through Mr. Caswell's tailor service. Standard courtesy for tonight." "It was sealed," the uptown tailor said, his voice too high. "My shop sealed the garment bag. She could have brought that thread from anywhere." Lena turned her palm toward him. "Then you will not mind if I ask why this thread is waxed for machine basting and not hand finishing? Your staff boasts about hand pressing, but this stitch was done fast, low, and crooked by someone using a portable mending machine. See the flattened twist?" The tailor's nostrils flared. Vivian snapped, "Enough. Mr. Belandi, with respect, are you really going to let a neighborhood seamstress delay a room full of donors because she found a thread?" "Tailor," Lena said. Vivian blinked. "What? I am a tailor. Seamstresses sew what they are handed. Tailors are paid to know why it was cut wrong." For the first time, Matteo Belandi almost smiled. It was not warm. It was not kind. It was the small, dangerous recognition of a man who had been listening and had decided the room had underestimated the wrong woman. "Lena Marrow," he said. She held his gaze. "Yes. You are coming inside." Vivian's face sharpened. "Absolutely not." Matteo glanced at his bodyguards. "Miss Sardo just forgot whose dinner this is. Help her remember gently." No one touched Vivian. No one had to. The two men in black merely shifted their attention toward her, and her objection died at the edge of her lipstick. Matteo looked back at Lena. The loosened tie hung open against his collar now, less perfect and somehow more powerful, because he had not hidden the mistake after it was exposed. "Bring your snips," he said. "And bring the thread." Lena closed her fingers around the hidden black stitch. Behind her, the iron in her shop hissed like an impatient secret. Chapter 2, Table 3. The social club had been built in 1928 by men who trusted brick more than banks. Its front room smelled of waxed floorboards, lemon polish, old photographs, and the tomato sauce warming in silver pans behind the kitchen door. Lena had repaired the curtains twice, shortened 3 altar cloths for funerals held in the back hall, and once taken in the sleeves of a choir robe while a widow cried into the hem. She knew the building the way working people knew places, not by ownership records, but by stains, drafts, loose hinges, and the places older women leaned when their knees hurt. Tonight the room had been dressed for reconciliation. Round tables wore white cloths and small vases of rosemary. Framed photographs of Bell Street hung on easels, the bakery before the fire, the old feast procession, the first Little League team sponsored by Belandi Produce, Matteo's father standing beside a line of men in dark suits, his tie slightly crooked in the famous photograph nobody liked to mention. Lena saw it before Matteo did. Or maybe he saw it and chose not to look. People turned as he entered without the perfect not expected of him. His tie hung open, one side loose, the hidden stitch missing. The bodyguards followed. Lena came beside him, not behind him, though she could feel every pair of eyes asking why a neighborhood tailor in a charcoal apron had been permitted through the front doors. At table 3 sat 4 women over 70, each dressed in black with pearls or old gold at their throats. Bell Street mothers. Church women. Women who remembered who had paid rent late and who had sent food when a son went to prison. Their attention went immediately to Mateo's open collar and then to Lena's hand. Lena lifted the broken thread. One of the women, Mrs. Greco, pressed her lips together. "Good," she said. Only one word, but it carried across the room like a verdict. Mateo's eyes moved toward her. "Mrs. Greco. If you had walked in wearing that knot, I would have left before the soup." A rustle passed through the room. Vivian came in last, visibly rearranging herself into dignity. The uptown tailor, Mr. Caswell, hovered near the bar with the wounded expression of a man unused to being questioned by someone whose shop had a bell over the door. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vivian said, too brightly. "We had a minor wardrobe confusion outside, but Mr. Belandi is here, and dinner can begin." "No," Mateo said. The single syllable cut through the room. Conversation stopped. Silverware settled. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Lena had altered enough suits for men who shouted because they feared no one would obey otherwise. Mateo's quiet held authority because everyone already knew the consequences of ignoring it. "Dinner begins after Ms. Merrow explains what she found." Caswell gave a short laugh. "A thread. She found a thread. Then you will survive hearing about it." Lena felt the room turn toward her with the weight of judgment. There were rich donors in tailored jackets, old shop owners, a priest, 3 city staffers, 2 young men pretending not to be Belandi soldiers, and a woman from the newspaper whose pen had already begun moving. This was the moment where a softer woman might shrink. Lena understood the temptation. She had spent years teaching herself not to make trouble unless the trouble had already been made and left on her cutting table. But the hidden stitch in her palm was not gossip. It was a mechanism. She walked to the nearest empty table and laid the thread on a white napkin. "A proper tie does not make this shape by accident," she said. "The knot Mr. Belandi was about to wear is an old mourning insult. In this neighborhood it means a man promised protection to a widow and broke it. The shape comes from the left blade pulling tight while the right side sits flat. If he had tied badly, the cloth would wrinkle here." She touched Mateo's loosened tie without asking this time, but lightly, with professional care. He stood still. "There are no natural wrinkles. The silk was forced from inside." She lifted the cut coil. Someone stitched the inner blade into a false angle, then pressed the knot memory with steam. He could tie it himself and still be made to wear the mark. Mrs. Greco nodded once. 2 other older women exchanged a look. Caswell folded his arms. "A charming performance. But she knows the legend because everyone knows it. That does not prove my service prepared anything malicious." "I did not say your service prepared it maliciously," Lena said. "I said someone used your garment bag." His expression tightened because the distinction was cleaner than he expected. Vivian cut in. "Mr. Belandi, this dinner is meant to heal old wounds. If we let a tailor turn it into a courtroom, we insult every family that came here in good faith." "Old wounds rot when people cover them with lace," Lena said before she could stop herself. A laugh burst from somewhere near the kitchen, quickly smothered. Mateo looked at her sidelong. There it was again, that nearly invisible shift at the corner of his mouth. "What else do you need?" he asked. "The garment bag," Lena said. "The delivery tag. A steam iron, if the kitchen has one that doesn't leak. And 5 minutes with the photograph of your father." At the mention of his father, the room changed. It was subtle but total, like a tablecloth being pulled under dishes without moving a plate. Mateo's face closed. "Why the photograph?" Lena pointed to the framed image by the north wall. "Because whoever did this wanted people to remember that exact picture. If I can compare the old knot to the one they tried to put on you, I can tell whether they copied the insult or misunderstood it. And the difference matters? To a tailor? Always. To a liar? Usually more." Mateo stared at her for a long second. Then he turned to his men. "Bring the garment bag. Bring the tag. Clear the club office." Vivian's voice sharpened. "This is absurd." Mateo faced her fully, and the softness left even the polished wood around them. "Absurd is a room that asks me for peace while sending me in dressed as my father's shame. Sit down, Vivian." She sat. Not because she wanted to. Because a command from Mateo Belandi, delivered that way, did not request room in the air. Lena looked down at the broken black stitch and realized her hand was trembling. Not from fear, exactly. From recognition. For years, people had brought her what they could not say aloud: a wedding suit too tight after a wife left, a funeral dress with makeup rubbed into the collar, a child's school blazer patched until the elbows became a map of poverty. She had learned to listen to fabric because people lied when they were ashamed. Tonight a man who could make a whole room sit with one sentence had listened too. Mateo leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she heard it. Are you afraid? Lena looked at the bodyguards, the donors, the old photograph, and the open office door waiting at the back of the room. Yes, she said. But I am more offended. This time, Matteo Belandi did smile. Good, he said. Offense usually lasts longer. Chapter 3, The Office Behind the Kitchen. The club office was barely large enough for a desk, a filing cabinet, 2 chairs, and the framed certificate from 1954 that declared the Bell Street Mutual Aid Society a lawful charitable association. Someone had hung a new LED light overhead, but the room still belonged to another century. It smelled of dust, paper, stale coffee, and radiator heat. Lena liked it immediately. Rooms that still smelled like themselves were easier to trust. One of Matteo's men placed the garment bag on the desk. It was black, heavy, and monogrammed with Caswell's tailoring house in silver thread. The delivery tag hung from the zipper pull, Matteo Belandi, formal black, club dinner, 7 p.m. Caswell stood in the doorway with Vivian beside him. Mrs. Greco had insisted on coming too, and Matteo had allowed it, perhaps because everyone knew denying old Italian women access to a family scandal only made the scandal louder. Lena set her snips on the desk, then washed her hands at the tiny sink in the corner. She dried them on a paper towel that had been refilled wrong side up, which told her the club had hired temporary help for tonight. You work slowly, Caswell said. I work once. Mrs. Greco made a pleased sound. Lena opened the garment bag and examined the zipper first. The metal pull had no scratches. The seal, however, had been cut and replaced with clear tape so perfectly aligned that a person in a hurry would have missed it. Lena did not touch the tape yet. She leaned close, let the light catch the surface, and saw one tiny trapped fiber under the edge. Cream wool. Vivian's coat was cream. Lena did not say it. Not yet. She removed the tie from Matteo's collar entirely and laid it beside the garment bag. It felt heavy in her hands, silk-backed with fine wool interlining. The front blade had been pressed with a professional iron, but the inner blade near the knot had a second crease that crossed the grain at the wrong angle. Steam memory, she said. English, Matteo said. Cloth remembers heat. If you force it while damp and let it cool under pressure, it wants to return to that shape. Like a person trained to apologize before they know what they did wrong. The line left her before she could dress it in something less personal. Matteo looked at her, and for one uncomfortable second she felt seen through the cloth of her own life. Then he said, continue. She pointed to the tie. This crease was not made by you. It was pressed in before you tied it. The stitch held the blade at the exact pull needed to copy the old forbidden knot. Whoever did it knew you would tie your own tie and trusted your habit to finish their work. My habit, Matteo repeated. You dress yourself before public appearances. His gaze sharpened. How do you know that? Lena did not look away. Because every powerful man has one thing he does himself so he can believe the rest of the room hasn't owned him yet. Yours is your tie. Mayor Bell's is his cufflinks. Father Angelo folds his own stole. My father sharpened his own shears until his hands shook. The office became very quiet. Matteo's voice softened by a dangerous degree. You knew my habit from looking? I knew from the tie. The knot had the small uneven tension of a man who ties it on his own neck, not flat on a table. If a valet tied it, both sides would sit too neat. If Caswell's staff tied it, they would have made it beautiful and dead. Yours was alive. Just forced. Mrs. Greco crossed herself. Madonna. Caswell's laugh was strained. Poetry is not evidence. No, Lena said. This is. She lifted the garment bag seal with the point of her snips. The clear tape came away in one strip. The trapped cream fiber clung to the underside. Lena placed it on a white envelope. Vivian stiffened. Matteo saw. So did Lena. That could have come from anywhere, Vivian said. It could, Lena agreed. Which is why I am not done. She examined the delivery tag. The handwriting was elegant, but the pressure was uneven, heavy on Matteo's name, light on the date. Someone had copied the letters, not written them from habit. In the corner of the tag, near the punched hole, was a faint dusting of white chalk. Tailor's chalk. But not the blue chalk Caswell's shop used, if the mark on his own sleeve was any guide. White chalk, soft, cheap, the kind Lena used because it brushed off diner uniforms and black funeral suits without leaving ghost lines. Her stomach tightened. This tag passed through another shop, she said. Caswell pounced. Yours, perhaps. No. I use white chalk, but I do not use lavender starch. Matteo's head turned. Lavender starch? Lena held the tag near him. Smell the corner. His expression said that mafia bosses were not often asked to sniff paper in rooms full of people. But after a second, he bent his head. The movement was small. It would have meant nothing to anyone else. To Lena, who had just watched him enter a room with his tie open rather than hide a mistake, it meant something. He inhaled once. Lavender. My shop smells like steam and burned cotton. Caswell's shop smells like cedar blocks and money. Lavender starch belongs to Sardo Formal Rentals on Mulberry, unless they changed after Mrs. Sardo died. Vivian's hand tightened on her purse. Mrs. Greco said, her cousin owns that place now. The office turned toward Vivian. She lifted her chin. My cousin rents linens and formal pieces to half the city. That proves nothing except that Lena collects gossip while hemming cheap pants. Lena felt that one land. Not because it was clever, but because it was familiar. Cheap pants paid her rent. Cheap pants belonged to men who worked night shifts, women who cleaned hotel rooms, boys going to court in suits too large because their mothers could only afford one. Cheap pants were not shameful. People who mocked them usually were. Mateo stepped forward before she answered. Vivian, he said, you will speak to Ms. Marrow with care. The words did not flatter Lena. They irritated her a little. She did not need a man to hand her dignity. But she understood the power of public correction, and Mateo had given it where the insult had been made. Lena picked up the tag. Ask your cousin whether he sent over a portable mending machine tonight. Ask him whether someone needed a black thread spool. Ask him why the pressure on this delivery tag changes after Mr. Belandi's name. Caswell said, you are guessing. No. I am following hands. She unfolded a paper napkin from the desk, placed the black stitch, cream fiber, delivery tag, and tie crease under the lamp. Then she took the framed photograph of Mateo's father from the side table. No one stopped her. The photograph had been taken 32 years earlier, if the faded feast banner in the corner was right. Lorenzo Belandi stood beside a young widow named Maria Greco, Mrs. Greco's sister-in-law, after some dispute Lena knew only in fragments. His tie was bent left in the forbidden shape. His mouth was hard. The people around him looked away. The photo had become shorthand over the decades. Lorenzo Belandi promised protection and failed. Lena did not know whether the story was true. She knew only that photographs were merciless because they froze results, not causes. She held Mateo's tie near the photograph. The copy is wrong, she said. Mateo's eyes flicked to her. How? Your father's knot was not made with a stitch. See the tail length? The narrow end hangs too low. Someone pulled him by the tie before the photo, or he loosened it himself after an argument. The mark was real only because people wanted it to be real. Tonight's knot copied the public story, not the garment. Mrs. Greco's face had gone pale. He was pulled, she whispered. Mateo turned very slowly toward her. What? The old woman swallowed. Her pearls trembled at her throat. Lorenzo was pulled. My brother-in-law grabbed his tie outside the club. We all saw the photograph later, and people said Lorenzo wore the widow's mark. But before the picture, there was a fight. I was 27. I kept quiet because my family told me to, and then quiet became 30 years. Mateo did not move. Lena had seen suits hold shape on dead men. She had never seen a living man turn so still. Mrs. Greco, he said, and his voice was lower than before, are you telling me my father was marked after the argument, not before it? Tears gathered in the old woman's eyes. I am telling you I let a photograph lie because the truth would have made my husband look cruel. He is dead now, and I am tired of protecting dead men from their own hands. Vivian took a sharp breath. This is not appropriate. No, Mateo said, without looking at her. This is late. There is a difference. Lena looked down at the black tie, the old photograph, the cut stitch. The job had widened under her hands. It was no longer only about tonight's humiliation. Someone had tried to weaponize a lie that had already eaten one family for decades. Mateo's hand rested on the edge of the desk. His signet ring pressed into the wood. Lena wanted, absurdly, to cover that hand with hers. Instead, she reached for the tie. Mr. Belandi, she said, I can show the room the difference. He looked at her then. For once, the power in his face had nowhere to stand. Under it was something colder and more human. Show them, he said. Chapter 4, The Lesson in Cloth. They returned to the main room with the tie, the photograph, and the evidence arranged on a serving tray because Lena refused to carry proof in her hands like a nervous maid. Use the tray, she told one of the younger waiters. He blinked. For thread? For evidence. Hold it level. He did. That was one of the things Lena loved about people who worked service jobs, they understood tone faster than titles. If you spoke as if the task mattered, they made it matter. The dinner guests had rearranged themselves into whispering clusters. Soup cooled untouched. The photographer from the newspaper tried to appear casual near the wall, which was impossible because her camera strap had twisted around her elbow. Vivian had recovered enough to stand near the podium, though she no longer looked certain the podium belonged to her. Matteo walked to the front of the room. Lena stayed one pace to his right, carrying the black tie. "Ms. Marrow will explain," he said. No introduction. No apology. No attempt to soften the fact that a woman everyone had mocked would now instruct the room. Lena placed the photograph on an easel and held up Matteo's tie. "Most people think clothes are shallow," she began. "They are not. Clothes are public handwriting. You tell the world what you respect, what you fear, what you are trying to hide, and what someone else managed to put on you before you looked in the mirror." A few people shifted. Good. Discomfort meant they were listening. This photograph of Lorenzo Bellandi was used for 32 years to say he wore a forbidden knot. The story was that he came into this room marked as a man who betrayed a widow. Tonight someone tried to make Matteo Bellandi repeat that picture. She held up the tie in the cut black stitch. But the copy was lazy. It copied the legend, not the cloth. Caswell muttered, "This is theater." Lena turned toward him. "Yes. Public humiliation usually is. I am correcting the costume." A murmur moved through the room. Mrs. Greco covered her mouth. Matteo's gaze remained on Lena, steady and unreadable. She pointed at the photograph. In the old picture, the tail of Lorenzo's tie hangs low. The knot is dragged, not constructed. That means someone pulled the tie after it was tied. Tonight's tie was engineered from the inside with a hidden black stitch to force the same leftward shape while Mr. Bellandi tied it himself. She took the serving tray and lifted the broken stitch. This is the difference between shame and a trap. Shame asks you to believe what you see. A trap makes sure you see it at the worst possible moment. The room was silent now. Lena continued before courage had time to cool. The garment bag seal was cut and retaped. A cream wool fiber was trapped under the tape. The delivery tag has lavender starch and white chalk from Sardo Formal Rentals. The stitch is waxed machine thread, not Caswell's hand finish. Someone outside Caswell's shop opened the garment bag, altered the tie, sealed it, and sent it here because they knew Mr. Bellandi ties his own tie. Matteo looked at Vivian. Vivian laughed, but only halfway. "This is insane. A woman smells lavender on a tag and suddenly I am part of a conspiracy." "Not suddenly," Lena said. "Gradually. Like most bad seams." A few people laughed, nervously but audibly. Vivian's face flushed. Lena walked to the table where the older women sat. "Mrs. Greco, may I?" The old woman handed her a black mourning scarf pinned at the shoulder. Lena tied the scarf once, cleanly, into a respectful old widow's knot. Then she tied it again, pulled left, showing the dragged shape in the photograph. Finally she used her own loose apron tie to demonstrate what the hidden stitch had done to Matteo's tie. 3 knots. 3 meanings. Even the donors could see it now. The respectful knot sat balanced. The dragged knot looked wounded. The engineered knot looked accusing. Matteo watched the apron tie in Lena's hands. Something in his expression shifted when she used her own work garment to expose a lie meant for his name. "Who benefits?" he asked. That was the question everyone had waited for. Vivian answered too fast. "No one. This is an old superstition turned into hysteria." Mrs. Greco lifted her head. "No. Someone benefits if Matteo leaves this room humiliated before the meal. The widows would leave. The old shop families would refuse his apology. The reconciliation fund would lose the Bellandi money, and the committee would vote to let an outside foundation manage it." The priest looked toward Vivian. So did 3 committee members. Lena's mind clicked through details the way her shears moved through cloth. Outside foundation. Formal rentals. Event chairwoman. Old photograph. Public insult. Not violence. Not a battle in an alley. A social murder, tailored for women who remembered symbols more sharply than contracts. "May I see the seating chart?" Lena asked. Vivian's mouth tightened. "Why?" "Because whoever planned this needed Mr. Bellandi photographed from the left when he entered. The forbidden not only reads clearly from that angle. If the photographer was placed opposite table 3, the picture would recreate his father's photograph." The newspaper photographer lowered her camera, suddenly alarmed. "I was told to stand near the north wall." "By whom?" Matteo asked. She pointed before she remembered to be diplomatic. Vivian did not move. The room did. Matteo's voice went quiet. "Vivian. This is ridiculous," she said, but the sentence had lost its spine. Lena walked to the seating chart on the podium. The names were printed on cream cardstock. Table 3 sat exactly where Mrs. Greco and the widows could see Matteo enter. The press mark on the floor, a small taped X for the photographer, faced the doorway at the same angle as the old photograph. Lena lifted the chart. On the back, in faint white chalk, someone had written, "Left entry, first frame." The newspaper photographer swore softly. Matteo did not swear. He did not raise his voice. He did not cross the room and frighten anyone with theatrics. He simply looked at Vivian as if the air between them had become court record. "You are going to remake my father's photograph." Vivian's face hardened. The polished charity chairwoman fell away, leaving a woman who had spent too long enjoying power disguised as etiquette. "Your father ruined families," she said. "You think one dinner fixes that?" "No," Matteo said. "I think truth has to be served before soup." Lena nearly smiled despite herself. Vivian pointed at her. "And you? Do you think he respects you? You are useful because you embarrassed me. Tomorrow you will go back to hemming pants while men like him decide which blocks survive." The words were meant to wound, and they did, but Lena had already learned something about wounds. The old ones hurt first. The new ones had to wait in line. Before she could answer, Matteo stepped to Lena's side. Not in front of her. Beside her. "Tomorrow," he said, "Miss Merrill will open her shop at 9. Men like me will knock before entering. And you will not speak of her work as if it is small in a room where her work saved every person from swallowing another lie." The room held its breath. Lena looked at him. He was not soft. He was not humbled into harmlessness. He stood like a dangerous man who had finally aimed his danger at the correct target. That, Lena thought, was different from being rescued. That was being believed in public. Chapter 5, Quiet Turn in the Tailor Shop. The dinner did not end. It changed shape. Vivian was escorted to a side room with 2 committee members, the priest, and Matteo's lawyer, who had appeared from somewhere with the speed of a man trained to smell liability. Caswell was not removed, but he sat very still, which for a proud tailor was almost worse. The old women insisted the soup be reheated because truth, Mrs. Greco announced, was no reason to punish the kitchen. Matteo did not eat. Lena barely tasted anything. Her hands kept remembering the moment the black stitch snapped. The sound had been tiny, almost polite, yet it had opened 30 years of silence. At 10:40, after statements were taken and the photographer surrendered the placement notes she had been given, Lena returned to her shop with the tie folded in butcher paper under her arm. She expected Matteo to send a man for it later. She expected, perhaps, a formal thank you delivered by someone whose shoulders filled the doorway. She did not expect Matteo Belandi himself to stand outside Marrow Alterations at 11, rain glittering on his black overcoat. The street was nearly empty. Russo's deli was dark. The nail salon sign buzzed pink over the wet sidewalk. Lena had turned off the front lights but left the work lamp on in the back, where 3 choir robes and a police uniform waited over chair backs. She unlocked the door. "You forgot your tie," she said. "No," Matteo said. "I came to learn why I did not see it." That was not the answer she had prepared for. She stepped aside. He entered the shop without bringing his bodyguards in. They remained outside by the SUV, visible through the rain-streaked window, 2 dark shapes giving privacy without surrendering vigilance. Inside, Matteo looked too large for the place. Marrow Alterations was narrow, warm, and cluttered with the honest mess of a working shop: thread racks, chalk, pattern paper, pressed jackets, half-mended uniforms, a jar of spare buttons sorted by color, and a mirror old enough to flatter no one. The air smelled of steam, cotton, metal, and the faint sweetness of the lavender sachet Lena kept in the drawer because her mother had loved it. He noticed the sachet. She saw him notice. "Not Sarto lavender," she said. "My mother's." "I wasn't accusing you. Men in your position accuse by noticing." He accepted that without offense, which made it harder to dislike him. Lena set the butcher paper on the cutting table and unfolded the tie. Under the work lamp, the silk looked less ceremonial and more vulnerable, just cloth with a wound. Matteo removed his gloves and placed them on the table. His hands were strong, long-fingered, clean, and marked by one old scar near the thumb. He did not touch the tie. "You said I tied it myself," he said. "You did. And that was used against me." "Yes." He looked at the thread racks behind her. "Teach me." It was a simple command, except it was not a command. Not quite. The words came with the force of habit, but the tone held something like consent waiting to be refused. Lena picked up a length of scrap black ribbon from a drawer. "Teaching works better if you stand where I can reach you." He came around the table. For the first time that night, Matteo Belandi looked uncertain about where to put himself. Not afraid. Never that. But unused to a room where power did not decide the shape of the lesson. Lena found the uncertainty unexpectedly touching, which annoyed her because she had no time to start finding mafia bosses touching at 11 o'clock in a shop full of unpaid invoices. She looped the ribbon around a wooden dress form. A knot is pressure with memory, she said. Pull here, and the shape says one thing. Pull there, and it says another. Most people think the final knot is the message, but the truth is in where the cloth wanted to go before someone forced it. Matteo stood close enough that she could feel the heat of him, though he did not crowd her. His attention was absolute. Men had stared at her before, but usually at her hands when they wanted a cuff fixed faster, or at her mouth when they thought being a woman alone in a shop made her available for commentary. Matteo looked as if every word she said had weight. It was unnerving. It was also, God help her, pleasant. She demonstrated the respectful knot first, then the dragged knot, then the engineered forbidden knot. See the difference? The first sits centered. The second looks injured. The third looks intentional. Good. He glanced at her. You sound surprised. Most men listen to tailors only when their pants split. I try not to repeat common mistakes. You wore one tonight. His mouth curved. I stand corrected. The warmth in his voice made her look away first. She reached for the actual tie. The stitch made your fabric choose the third shape. It was placed here, where the inner blade folds under the front. Small enough to vanish, strong enough to guide the pull. The trick only worked because you trusted your own hands. Matteo's face closed again, but not against her. Against something inward. My father trusted his hands, he said. He built half this street with them. After that photograph, every story about him changed. Men who owed him money called it moral judgment. Families he had protected decided he had broken faith. I was 10. I remember watching my mother burn his ties after the funeral because she could not stand seeing fabric near his throat. Lena's fingers stilled on the silk. The shop hummed quietly around them, radiator ticking, rain tapping glass, a hanger creaking under the weight of a winter coat. She could have said she was sorry. People said that because they did not know where to put their hands. Instead, she picked up the ribbon and tied the dragged knot again. This one was done to him, she said. Matteo looked at the knot. Yes. Then stop wearing the punishment as if he tied it willingly. His gaze lifted to hers. The sentence had come out sharper than she intended, but she did not take it back. Comfort was not always soft. Sometimes comfort meant cutting the wrong thread even when the cloth complained. Matteo was silent long enough that Lena began to wonder whether she had gone too far. Then he said, You speak as if you have done that before. She smiled without humor. I have spent my life removing other people's bad stitches from my name. Poor girl. Bossy girl. Spinster tailor. Charity case. Woman who should be grateful when rich people bring her torn hems and call it support. You are not grateful? For work, yes. For contempt dressed as kindness, no. He watched her for a long breath. Lena. Her name and his voice did something inconvenient to the room. Yes? Earlier, I stepped beside you. Not in front of you. Was that correct? The question disarmed her more completely than any compliment could have. She looked down at the tie because his face was too much. It was. I will remember. Men always say that after being taught. Then test me later. She looked up. There was no smirk in him now. No easy flirtation. Just a dangerous man standing in her narrow shop, asking to be held to a standard she had not expected him to understand. Lena should have stepped back. Instead, she reached across the table and picked up his tie. Do you want it repaired? Can it be? Yes. The silk is not ruined. Only insulted. Then repair it. Not for the room. For me. That request was quieter than the others. It had no audience. No photographer. No old women to impress. It landed in the small space between them and stayed there. Lena threaded a needle with black silk. Sit, she said. Matteo Belandi sat at her cutting table without argument. Outside, his bodyguards looked carefully away. Chapter 6, The Woman Who Knew Sleeves. By morning, Bell Street had 3 versions of the story. In the first, Lena Marrow had attacked Matteo Belandi with scissors because poor women went dramatic when important men ignored them. In the second, Matteo had staged the entire thing to make himself look wounded and noble. In the third, which moved fastest because it was closest to the truth, a tailor had cut a hidden stitch from a mafia boss's black tie and made a room full of respectable people admit that cloth could carry a lie better than a mouth. Lena heard all 3 before 10. She heard them from Mrs. Alvarez, who brought in 2 school uniform skirts and a bag of warm rolls because you probably forgot breakfast after saving a man from his own neckwear. She heard them from a delivery driver whose jacket zipper had broken and who whispered, as if the mannequins might report him, that his aunt had always believed Lorenzo Belandi was framed by that photograph. She heard them from a young woman in designer boots who came in only to look around and left when Lena asked whether she needed an actual alteration. At 11, Caswell arrived. He did not bring an apology. Men like Caswell treated apology as a garment to be rented only when cameras were present. He entered with his coat collar raised and his expression arranged into suffering. "Ms. Marrow." Lena was pinning a bus driver's sleeve. She did not look up. "Take a number." The bus driver, a broad woman named Tasha, glanced at Caswell's polished shoes and then at the paper number dispenser Lena had bought as a joke years earlier. "He's number 4, Tasha said. "I'm number 3, and my route starts in 40 minutes. Caswell flushed. "This is a private matter." "Then you should not have brought it into my shop," Lena said. He lowered his voice. "I want the tie." Now she looked up. "No. It is evidence belonging to my service. It belongs to the man whose neck it tried to disgrace. You are making a mistake. A woman in your position cannot afford to become difficult." Tasha inhaled in a way that suggested route schedules were the only thing preventing violence. Lena set a pin into the sleeve, slow and straight. "A woman in my position," Lena said, "can afford pins, thread, rent if customers pay on time, and one good lawyer if she sells the industrial steamer. Choose your next sentence with that budget in mind." Caswell's mouth thinned. "You think Belandi will protect you?" "No. I think I protected him yesterday, which means I know the difference between protection and ownership." The bell over the door rang again. Matteo Belandi stepped inside. He wore a dark charcoal suit today, not black, and no tie. The open collar should have made him look informal. It did not. Some men carried formality in their bones. His overcoat was folded over one arm, his signet ring bare, his face clean of any expression that could be called pleasant. Caswell went rigid. Tasha whispered, "Oh, that timing was worth my late slip." Matteo looked at Lena first. "Am I interrupting paid work?" That question did more to unsettle her than his arrival. "Yes," she said. "But so is he." Matteo turned to Caswell. The air in the shop tightened, but Matteo did not threaten him. He did not need to. He simply took one step forward and held out a folded page. "Your shop records were reviewed this morning. You did not alter the tie. Someone used your bag in your name. You will give Ms. Marrow a written apology for accusing her of theft and fraud in front of witnesses. Then you will give my attorney everything you know about the garment bag's pickup route." Caswell's pride fought for breath. "And if I refuse? Then Ms. Marrow sells her industrial steamer for a lawyer, and I buy her a better one after she wins." Lena stared at him. "I did not ask you to buy me a steamer," she said. Matteo's gaze returned to her. "No. You made that clear yesterday." The offer was poorly phrased. Tasha made a soft sound of delight. Caswell looked between them, confused by a powerful man correcting himself in front of a tailor and a bus driver. Matteo continued, as if revising in real time. "If you need legal support because of actions taken against you during this matter, I will ensure it is available without making it a gift or a chain." "Better?" Lena tried not to smile. "Better." "Good." Tasha leaned toward Caswell. "You should apologize before they start enjoying this." He did, stiffly and badly, but the apology existed on paper by noon. Lena pinned it to the corkboard behind the register, not because she needed to admire it, but because working women deserved visible proof when arrogant men learned grammar around regret. Matteo waited until Tasha left with both sleeves corrected and a story that would reach 3 bus routes before lunch. Then he placed a brown envelope on Lena's cutting table. "The garment bag route," he said. "The dinner committee wants to reconvene tonight. Vivian has stepped down. Mrs. Greco asked that you attend." "Mrs. Greco asked?" She said, and I quote, "Do not send the man alone. He still does not know what sleeves mean." Lena laughed before she could stop herself. It changed Matteo's face. Not dramatically. He was not a man who melted. But something in his eyes warmed as if he had not expected laughter to enter the shop and stay. "What do sleeves mean?" he asked. "Depends on the sleeve." "Teach me another thing." She should have said she was busy. She was busy. There were hems due, cuffs waiting, a bride's aunt coming at 2 with a dress emergency, and a stack of choir robes that had begun to look at her accusingly from the back chair. But Matteo did not ask as a man killing time. He asked as a man trying to learn a language he should have known before power made him deaf. Lena opened the envelope. Inside were copies of delivery logs, a photograph of the garment bag at Caswell's shop, and a receipt from Sardo Formal Rentals for emergency pressing of 1 black tie, 1 black dinner jacket, 1 white pocket square. The jacket and pocket square had never reached Mateo. Lena spread the pages on the table. This is a route, she said. Routes are like seams. They tell you where pressure was applied. Mateo stood beside her. Not in front. She noticed. So did he. The receipt timestamp was 4:12 p.m. The garment bag had left Caswell's at 3:20 and arrived at the social club at 5:35. Sardo Formal Rental sat 2 blocks away. There was time for a detour. The driver's signature was messy, but a person who signed all day had not written it. The D in delivery leaned backward, copied from a printed form. The driver did not sign this, Lena said. How do you know? Because people who sign often move forward. People who copy hesitate at capitals. That is handwriting, not tailoring. Tailoring is handwriting with cloth. Do not get narrow on me now. His mouth curved again. She pointed to the receipt. Also, why press a white pocket square if you wore no pocket square? Mateo looked down. Someone prepared a full look. Yes. The tie was one part. What was the pocket square supposed to do? He was silent. Lena imagined the room, Mateo entering, black tie forced into the forbidden knot, white pocket square perhaps folded in another old signal. Bell Street had 100 tiny codes, half-spoken, half-stitched into memory. She had learned them because older customers corrected her sharply when she got funeral cuffs wrong or used the wrong ribbon width for a saint's procession. Mrs. Greco will know, Lena said. Then we ask her. You ask her. She owes you truth. Will you come? To translate sleeves? To stand where people tried to make you kneel. The words landed too close to something she wanted. Lena shut the envelope and busied her hands with the ribbon scraps on the table. You need to be careful, she said. If you put me beside you tonight, half the room will think you are using me as proof you respect working people. The other half will think I am using you to climb. What will you think? That was not fair. It was too direct, too quiet, and impossible to answer with a joke. Lena looked at him. I will think you are either learning very quickly or making a very elegant mistake. And which would you prefer? Learning. Then test me again. She picked up the brown envelope and tapped it against his chest, careful to touch paper, not skin. Tonight, if you want me there, you introduce me by my work. Not as the woman who saved you. Not as a brave little tailor. Not as a witness. As the person who understands what was done. Mateo took the envelope. Lena Marrow, tailor and textile evidence expert. I am not an expert. You are. You just have not been paid like one. She hated how good that felt. Do not flatter me into a job. I am not offering a job. What are you offering? For the first time since he entered, Matteo Bellandi looked away first. Only for a second. A place beside me tonight, he said. After that, dinner somewhere quieter, if you want it. Lena's heart did something foolish enough to need supervision. That is not a business offer. No. Mafia bosses ask tailors to dinner often? Never. Then you should practice asking without sounding like you are issuing a subpoena. He considered that with grave seriousness, which made her want to laugh again. Then he said, Lena, after this is over, may I take you to dinner somewhere no one is trying to insult my ancestors through neckwear? She folded her arms. Better. Is that a yes? That is a later. I can work with later. I assumed you could. Men like you build empires out of later. Men like me also lose things by waiting too long. The shop went quiet around them. Lena held his gaze, and for once she did not feel small under it. She felt measured, yes, but also met. The bell over the door rang, saving both of them from the next sentence. The bride's aunt swept in carrying a satin dress and a crisis large enough to fill the room. Mateo stepped back at once. Paid work, he said. Exactly. He picked up his gloves. At the door, he paused. 7 tonight? 7, Lena said. And Mr. Bellandi? He turned. Wear the repaired tie. No pocket square. Why? Because if the pocket square was part of the insult, we do not give them the satisfaction of choosing its absence for you. I choose it. You wear nothing there because you need no correction. Mateo looked at her for one long second. Yes, ma'am, he said. The bride's aunt gasped. Lena pretended not to enjoy it. Chapter 7, The Second Dinner. The second dinner was smaller, sharper, and much more dangerous in the way polite rooms could be dangerous when everyone had slept badly and arrived with prepared sentences. No donors. No newspaper photographer. No decorative rosemary. Just the committee, the old women from Table 3, Caswell, Vivian's cousin from Sardo Formal Rentals, Father Angelo, Matteo's lawyer, 2 Bellandi men near the door, and Lena Marrow in her best black dress with a charcoal jacket she had tailored from a thrift store men's blazer. Matteo arrived at 7 exactly. He wore the repaired black tie. Lena had fixed it so the silk held its dignity without hiding its history. The repaired section near the inner blade was invisible unless a person knew where to look. She knew. He knew. That was enough. He did not wear a pocket square. When he entered, Mrs. Greco's eyes went straight to his breast pocket. Then she nodded. Good, Lena thought. One trap avoided. Matteo stopped at the head of the room. Before we begin, Ms. Marrow will explain the garment route. Not brave Tailor. Not neighborhood girl. Not witness. Ms. Marrow. He remembered. Lena walked to the table with the envelope, the tie photographs, the delivery receipt, and a white pocket square sealed in plastic. It had been recovered from Sardo Formal Rentals that afternoon, found in a bin marked returned items. The pocket square had a fold Lena recognized from old funeral customs, 3 points for 3 vows broken. Not many people would know that fold anymore. Enough old women did. Vivian's cousin, Paul Sardo, sweated through his collar before Lena spoke. This is not a criminal trial, Matteo's lawyer said, mostly for the room. It is a committee review of attempted reputational fraud connected to a community fund dinner. Mr. Sardo, you may answer voluntarily, or you may wait for formal proceedings. Paul Sardo chose the foolish middle path. I pressed what I was given. That's all. Lena laid the pocket square on black velvet so the fold showed clearly. Mrs. Greco made a small wounded sound. Tell them, Matteo said, but gently this time. The old woman sat straighter. 3 points. Broken protection, broken mourning, broken bread. It was used after the old famine disputes. Men wore it when they admitted they had taken food from widows or children. No decent man would wear it unless doing public penance. Matteo's face hardened. Lena added, the plan was not only the forbidden knot. If Mr. Bellandi had worn this pocket square with it, the photograph would have read as confession. Not mistake. Not insult. Confession. Paul Sardo wiped his forehead. I don't know old codes. People bring things to press. Who brought it? Matteo asked. Paul looked toward the empty chair where Vivian should have been. She had declined to attend after her lawyer advised rest, a phrase Lena had translated as panic with stationery. A woman from the committee, Paul said. Name. Vivian. She said it was historical. A tribute. I thought it was theatrical, but she paid cash. Caswell leaned back, vindication battling humiliation on his face. Lena was not done. Who stitched the tie? Paul swallowed. My niece. She does quick machine fixes after school. She didn't know what it meant. Vivian gave her the angle on a phone photo. Told her it was to keep the tie camera ready. That, at least, sounded true. Lena could imagine a teenage girl at a portable machine, bored and underpaid, making a tiny black stitch without knowing she had joined a conspiracy of symbols. Do not blame the girl, Lena said to Matteo before he spoke. Everyone looked at her. Matteo's eyes narrowed, not in anger but attention. She made a stitch, Lena said. Adults made the meaning. Mrs. Greco murmured agreement. Paul looked almost grateful, which Lena did not need but accepted as proof that mercy could sit beside accuracy without weakening it. Matteo nodded once. The girl is not part of this. His lawyer wrote something down. The committee chair, an older grocer named Mr. Bell, rubbed his eyes. Vivian controlled the fund paperwork, the dinner seating, the press position, and the formal wear. Yes, Lena said. But she did not invent the old symbols. She used what this room refused to correct for 30 years. That was the part nobody liked. The room could punish Vivian and still avoid itself. Lena would not let them. Not because she enjoyed discomfort, though perhaps she enjoyed a little when it was earned, but because a bad seam left inside a coat always found a way to pull again. Matteo looked at her, and she saw him understand before the others did. Say it, he said. Lena rested her hands on the table. Lorenzo Bellandi was publicly marked by a dragged tie in a photograph after a fight. People let the photograph become truth because it served old grudges. Vivian tried to repeat that lie using a better costume. If this committee wants reconciliation, it cannot begin by punishing only the latest liar. It has to correct the first lie too. Mrs. Greco closed her eyes. Father Angelo said quietly, "She is right." The grocer sighed as if the sound came from his bones. "What do you propose?" Lena almost laughed. She was a tailor. People asked her to fix hems, not neighborhoods. But then she looked at Matteo, who stood beside her again, letting the question land where she could answer it. She looked at Mrs. Greco, who had carried truth too long. She looked at Paul Sardo, who had cooperated with a small lie because cash and family pressure made bad choices feel ordinary. "You display both photographs," Lena said. "The old one and tonight's attempted copy. Under the old one, you write what Mrs. Greco testified: Lorenzo's tie was pulled during an argument before the picture. Under the new one, you write that the hidden stitch was cut before Matteo entered. Then you create a public alteration fund out of the reconciliation budget. Not charity. Repairs. Funeral suits, interview clothes, school uniforms, work coats. People bring garments with stories attached, and they leave with those stories less crooked." No one spoke. Matteo's expression had changed. It was not shock. It was something deeper and more dangerous to Lena's ability to remain practical. Respect. Not the easy kind men performed when they wanted to be seen respecting. This was the kind that required changing a plan. Mr. Bell frowned. "An alteration fund?" "Yes," Lena said. "You want reconciliation? Start with the things people wear when they have to stand in rooms that judge them." Mrs. Greco began to cry silently. Matteo turned to his lawyer. "Make it happen." The lawyer looked at him. "Tonight?" "Tonight." Mr. Bell sputtered, "We cannot approve a new fund structure without procedure." Matteo faced him. "Then begin procedure. I will match the first year's budget personally, provided Ms. Marrow writes the repair standards and every shop on Bell Street can apply to participate. Not only hers." Lena turned toward him. "Good correction." His mouth moved slightly. "I am learning." The warmth between them had no business being in that room, but it was there anyway, threading itself through tension like silk through wool. Paul Sardo cleared his throat. "My shop would participate. If allowed. And I'll pay for the niece's training properly." "You will pay her properly whether allowed or not," Lena said. He nodded quickly. "Yes. Yes, of course." Mrs. Greco reached for Lena's hand across the table. Her fingers were thin, cool, and strong. "My sister-in-law died believing half this street thought Lorenzo betrayed her," she said. "She never knew about the tie." Lena squeezed her hand. "Then tell her properly when you pray tonight." Matteo looked away. Not because he was embarrassed. Because grief had crossed the room, and even dangerous men sometimes needed 1 second to decide how much of themselves could be seen. Lena gave him that second. Then she picked up the black tie in the white pocket square. "One more thing," she said. Matteo turned back. She folded the pocket square flat, removing the 3 points. Then she placed it beside the tie without putting it in his jacket. "Symbols do not own cloth forever. Wash it. Press it. Use it for something else." "What would you make from it?" he asked. "A lining patch," she said. "Inside a coat. Somewhere useful, not performative." He nodded slowly. "Then do that." "For whose coat?" His eyes held hers. "Mine," he said. "If you are willing." The room pretended not to notice the quiet that followed. It was kind of them. Or maybe wise. Chapter 8, The Coat Lining. For 3 days, Bell Street became obsessed with tailoring. People who had never cared whether a sleeve broke cleanly at the wrist suddenly inspected their jackets in bakery windows. Men who once called alterations women's fuss brought in coats with defensive explanations. Women arrived with dresses they had meant to throw away and stories they had not meant to tell. A mechanic asked whether a torn work shirt could be saved because his daughter liked the patch on the elbow. A widow brought her husband's dinner jacket and said she wanted it remade into a vest for her grandson's graduation, then cried because Lena measured grief with the same tape she used for shoulders. The hidden black stitch became a phrase. At first people used it for the scandal. Then they used it for anything small that had been pulling a life in the wrong direction. "Found the hidden black stitch in my lease," Mrs. Alvarez said, waving a rent notice at the deli. "My son found one in his apology," Tasha told Lena, rolling her eyes. "He said sorry for yelling but not for lying. I made him cut that stitch clean." Lena pretended not to be moved by any of it and failed privately. Matteo did not come by for those 3 days. He sent no flowers. No black card. No absurd offer to buy the building, which Lena appreciated more than flowers. His lawyer sent a formal draft of the Bell Street Repair Fund standards and addressed the envelope to Lena Marrow, Tailor. Not consultant. Not witness. Tailor. She marked the draft in red pencil until it looked wounded. On the fourth evening, Matteo returned with a coat over his arm. The shop was technically closed, but the door was unlocked because Lena was inside finishing a jacket for Father Angelo. She had pinned her hair badly, kicked off one shoe under the cutting table, and eaten half a cold meatball sandwich over the sink. Romance, she had learned, rarely arrived when a woman had arranged herself for it. More often it came when there was sauce on her thumb and a thread stuck to her cheek. Matteo noticed the thread. "You have evidence on your face," he said. She wiped the wrong cheek. Other side. He did not reach for it. He waited. That tiny restraint nearly undid her. Lena found the thread and flicked it into the scrap bin. "You brought the coat. You said the pocket square should become a lining patch. I say many things. Most powerful men hear about 40%. I am trying for 60. Ambitious." He laid the coat on the table. It was the black overcoat he had worn the night of the dinner, heavy wool, beautifully made, stern enough to intimidate a wardrobe. Inside, the lining had torn near the left breast from long wear, not neglect. Lena could see where his hand had gone into that inner pocket hundreds of times. "What do you keep there?" she asked. "Letters." That surprised her. "From whom?" "My mother. One from my father. A photograph of my sister before she moved west and decided my name was too heavy for her children." Lena touched the torn lining. "Important pocket." "Yes." The word held more trust than it should have. She measured the tear, then unfolded the white pocket square. It no longer looked accusatory without the old fold. It was just white linen, fine, strong, waiting for a better use. "Sit," she said. He sat in the wooden customer chair, not at the cutting table this time, as if he understood the difference between a lesson and work. Lena appreciated that. She cut the linen patch, basted it, and chose black silk thread so the repair would vanish unless the coat was opened. Matteo watched her hands. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "What?" "Sitting still." "Yes." "Good. Practice." He huffed a quiet laugh. The sound loosened something in the room. Lena kept sewing, because looking at him after making him laugh seemed risky. "The fun passed," he said. "I saw the draft. It needs work." "I expected that." "You wrote, deserving applicants." "Remove deserving. People who need cuffs repaired should not have to prove moral worth." "Done." "You wrote, modest assistance." "Remove modest. It sounds ashamed of itself." "Done." "You listed my shop first. Put the oldest dry cleaner first. Mr. D'Angelo is 80 and still presses police uniforms by hand. If my name leads, people will say you built it around me." Matteo leaned back. "Would that be so terrible?" Lena looked up, needle paused. "Yes." He accepted it. "Then D'Angelo leads." She returned to the coat. "You are becoming very obedient. Should I worry?" "I am not obedient. I am strategic." "That sounds like obedience wearing a better suit." This time he smiled fully. "Not for the room. Not for politics. For her." Lena almost stuck the needle into her finger. She focused on the patch until her pulse behaved. "Mrs. Greco told the story at church," Matteo said after a while. "About my father. About the fight before the photograph." "How did people take it?" "Badly. Then well. Then loudly." "That sounds like church." "She asked me to thank you." "She already did." "She said you would say that." "She told me to thank you anyway because stubborn women require repetition." Lena smiled despite herself. "She has range." "She also said I should not bring flowers unless I know what kind you like." "Do you?" "No." "Good. Then you were right not to bring them." "What do you like?" The question was simple, but it reached too far. Lena had been asked what she needed, what she charged, how soon she could finish, whether she was married, whether she did discounts for friends of friends. What she liked was a rarer question. She tied off the thread and clipped it. "Peonies," she said. "But not from expensive florists. The ones with ants still in them. My mother said flowers without evidence of life were just decorations." Matteo listened as if she had handed him a map. "Peonies with ants," he said. "Do not bring me ants on purpose." "Understood." She smoothed the lining patch into place. The white linen strengthened the torn pocket without showing from outside. "There," she said. "Useful, not performative." Matteo stood and came to the table. He touched the repaired lining with 2 fingers. "May I ask something that is not about the fund?" Lena's hands became very interested in cleaning the needle. "You may ask. I may refuse." "Good." He waited until she looked at him. "May I take you to dinner tonight?" Quietly. "No committee. No symbols." No one watching to decide whether either of us is making a point. Her first instinct was to make a joke. Her second was to refuse because refusal felt safer than wanting. Her third, which had always been the most troublesome, was to tell the truth. I am not interested in being collected, she said. I know. Or displayed. I know. Or turned into a story where a powerful man improves his reputation by being kind to a working woman. Mateo's face grew serious. Lena, I have enough reputation. Most of it is terrible and deserved. I am not asking you to repair it over dinner. Then what are you asking? He took a breath. It was small, but she saw it. The man who could command rooms needed breath to ask one woman for something that could not be ordered. I am asking whether the woman who cut a lie from my tie would like to eat with me because I want to know what she thinks when no one is forcing her to speak. That was a good answer. Damn him. Lena looked at the repaired coat, the linen patch, the clean invisible stitches. She thought of her mother telling her not to make herself smaller to fit a man's pocket. She thought of her father sharpening shears until his hands shook. She thought of Mateo stepping beside her, correcting himself, listening, returning with a coat instead of a gift. Where? She asked. His eyes warmed. You choose. Diner on 9th. Not expensive. Very observant. I can do expensive badly another time. Do not threaten me. He smiled again. She took her jacket from the hook and pointed at the door. You wait outside while I lock up. Why? Because if I let you stand in here looking like that while I fix my hair, I will make poor decisions. Mateo went very still. Then, with care, he picked up his coat. I will wait outside. Lena turned away before he could see her face fully. Good. At the door, he paused. Lena. Yes? For what it is worth, I am hoping for one of your poor decisions eventually. She threw a spool of thread at him. He caught it. Of course he did. Chapter 9, The Diner on 9th. The diner on 9th had yellow booths, coffee strong enough to settle arguments, and a waitress named Jody who had once threatened to charge a city councilman extra for saying, "sweetheart," too many times. Lena trusted the place. More importantly, everyone there was too tired from work to act impressed by Matteo Bellandi for more than 30 seconds. Jody looked him up and down when they entered. You trouble? She asked Lena. Probably. Booth 6. I can see booth 6 from the counter. Matteo glanced at Lena. Should I be offended? No. You should tip well and behave. I can do both. We'll see, Jody said, and walked away. Matteo removed his overcoat and slid into the booth across from Lena. Without the coat and the performance of public danger, he still looked like a man people moved around carefully. But in the yellow diner light, with the repaired tie folded in his pocket instead of around his throat, he also looked tired. Lena knew tired. Tired was honest when people stopped dressing it up. They ordered meatloaf, soup, and coffee. Matteo did not pretend to understand the menu better than she did. That earned him points. When Jody brought the mugs, he thanked her by name after reading her tag, which earned him more. Do not become charming now, Lena said. Would that be inconvenient? Very. He looked pleased in a restrained, irritating way. They ate. For several minutes, nothing dramatic happened. No one burst through the door. No old women demanded testimony. No hidden stitches appeared in napkins or sleeves. A man in a construction vest argued softly with his wife over a phone bill. 2 teenagers shared fries. Jody refilled coffee with the solemn competence of a priest at mass. Lena felt herself begin to relax. You are different here, Matteo said. Less useful? Less guarded. That is not the same. I know. She studied him over her mug. You say that often for a man who did not seem to know much 2 days ago. I knew other things. Such as? How to make a room quiet. How to remember debts. How to judge whether a man is lying by the timing of his breath. How to keep people alive by making worse people afraid. There it was. The truth under the romance. He was not a polished billionaire with unfortunate rumors. He was a mafia boss, and whatever gentleness he had shown her did not erase the machinery of his life. Lena appreciated that he did not try to perfume it. And now, she asked. Now I know that cloth can lie, old women can carry truth longer than priests, and a tailor with sauce on her thumb can make me more nervous than a room full of enemies. Her cheeks warmed. I did not have sauce on my thumb. You did. You were not supposed to notice. Men in my position accuse by noticing, he said. She laughed, and his face changed again, softer this time, though not weak. Never weak. A comfortable silence settled between them. Lena ate half her meatloaf and pushed the rest toward him when she saw him eye it. Are you feeding me? He asked. I am preventing waste. Of course. He ate it. Something about that small domestic act, more than the committee room or the repaired coat, frightened her. It was easy to stand brave under public pressure. Lena had practice. It was harder to sit across from a man who took what she offered without turning it into tribute. After dinner, they walked back toward Bell Street. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed and reflective. Mateo's bodyguards followed at a distance so professional they might have been shadows with union discipline. At her shop door, Lena stopped. Thank you, Mateo said. For dinner? You paid. For choosing a place where no one cared enough to be impressed. That was for me. I know. I am thanking you anyway. She unlocked the door but did not open it. The streetlight caught his face, carving severity back into his features. Yet she had seen him sniff a delivery tag, sit at her cutting table, and ask whether he had stood beside her correctly. Power looked different after that. Not smaller. More accountable. Mateo, she said. His attention sharpened at once. If this continues, and I am not saying it will, you do not get to use me as proof you are good. I am not good. The answer came without hesitation. She appreciated that too. Then what are you? He considered the question. Trying to be correct where I was wrong. Dangerous where danger is needed. Quiet where a woman is speaking. Lena swallowed. That last part needs work. I assumed. She looked down, then back up. You may kiss me once. Mateo did not move immediately. May I touch your face? The question nearly broke her. Lena nodded. He stepped closer and lifted one hand, bare now, warm despite the night air. His fingers touched her cheek with care that did not ask to be praised for restraint. He kissed her slowly, not claiming, not consuming, but present with the full force of himself. The kind of kiss that did not make a woman disappear into a man's desire, but made her more aware of her own. When he drew back, Lena kept her eyes closed for 1 second longer than necessary. That was more than once, she said. It was one continuous decision. She opened her eyes. Mafia law? Tailor's loophole. She laughed against her will. He looked unbearably pleased. Good night, Lena. Good night, Mateo. She went inside before she made another poor decision. Through the window, she watched him stand on the sidewalk until her lock turned and the backlight came on. Then he walked to the SUV. Not because she needed guarding. Because he had learned the difference between watching and owning. Epilogue, useful, not performative. 6 weeks later, the Bell Street Repair Fund opened inside the old social club with 5 participating shops, a line out the door, and a sign Lena had written herself because the committee's first draft sounded like a charity brochure written by guilty people. The sign read, "Good cloth deserves a second chance. So do the people wearing it." No one argued with her punctuation. The 2 photographs hung on the north wall. Lorenzo Belandi's old picture had a new caption written after Mrs. Greco's testimony. Beside it hung a photograph from the night of the attempted copy, Mateo with his tie open, Lena's hand raised with the hidden black stitch visible between her fingers. Under that one, the caption read, "The stitch was cut before the lie could enter the room." People stopped to read it. Some crossed themselves. Some shook their heads. Some told their children the shortened version because children did not need every ugly adult detail to understand that small things could tell the truth. Lena did not run the fund alone. She refused. D'Angelo's dry cleaning handled uniforms, Marrow Alterations handled formal wear and complex repairs, Mrs. Alvarez coordinated school clothes, and the young niece from Sarto Formal Rentals became Lena's Tuesday apprentice after Paul Sarto learned that paying teenagers properly was cheaper than public shame. Mateo came at noon with no entourage inside, though Lena knew 2 men waited by the black SUV outside because he was still who he was. He wore the overcoat with the white lining patch inside the left breast. She had stitched it so neatly that only he could feel where the old symbol had become a useful reinforcement. He brought peonies. There were no ants, but there was a little dirt on the stems. Acceptable, Lena said. High praise. Do not get used to it. Mrs. Greco, passing behind them with a stack of repaired altar cloths, said, he should get used to earning it. Mateo bowed his head to her. Yes, ma'am. Lena hid her smile in the flowers. At 3, a young man came in with a suit jacket too large in the shoulders. He had a job interview the next morning and no money until Friday. Lena marked the shoulders, D'Angelo checked the pressing schedule, and Mrs. Alvarez gave him a voucher without asking him to perform gratitude. Mateo watched from the doorway, silent and attentive. Later, when the rush thinned, he found Lena in the back room sorting thread. You were right, he said. I often am. Be specific. This is not charity. She looked through the open doorway at the young man trying on his corrected jacket, standing taller because cloth finally agreed with him. No, she said. It is repair. Matteo stood beside her. His shoulder did not touch hers, but the space between them knew it could. Dinner tonight? He asked. Diner or dangerous? Diner. I have learned not to threaten you with expensive. Good. And after dinner? Lena glanced at him. That depends on whether you behave. I have been practicing. With whom? Mrs. Greco. She says I am improving, though my sleeve manners remain tragic. Lena laughed. The sound moved into the front room, where people were pinning, pressing, mending, and telling stories with cloth in their hands. On the corkboard behind the register, the hidden black stitch had been sealed in a tiny clear envelope. People had begun touching the envelope before difficult fittings, as if it were a saint's relic for women who had been told their work was too small to matter. Lena did not correct them. Some symbols deserved to be reused. Matteo looked at the envelope, then at her. Do you ever miss the quiet? He asked. She considered lying, then decided against it. He was learning, and learning required honest fabric. Sometimes. But quiet is not always peace. Sometimes it is just a room waiting for someone to cut the right stitch. His hand brushed hers, a question. She answered by turning her palm. He took her hand in the back room of a neighborhood repair fund, surrounded by thread, steam, old grief, new hems, and the useful remains of a lie that had failed to enter the room. No one applauded. No one needed to. For once, the cloth held.